Glad to see you everyone. We are happy to invite you to Zaporizhia Gymnasium number 93. And today we are going to present our museum. The deeds should live forever. Everything started in the year 1976, when the idea of children and their dream to create their own museum started. So, one of the founders of the museum was a teacher of mathematics, Kayula Katerina. She and her 10A class decided to organize the museum devoted to the heroes of the Second World War. And the day of creation of the museum is the 7th May 1976, when there was the first meeting with the representatives of veteranship who participated in the Great War. And this date is associated with the creation of the museum. The first exposition represented different exhibits collected by students, teachers, and those ones that were handed over by the veterans. These were the letters, awards of soldiers, photos of the war years, personal belongings of Soviet and German soldiers. There were also weapons, etc. Later in the museum, students began to conduct tours for residents of the district and neighboring schools. Visitors of the museum were introduced to exhibits that covered the battle path of Soviet division that liberated the city of Zaporizhia in 1943. The monuments to Mikhailo Polyakov and Mykolai Mikhailov were sponsored due to the collection of the waste paper, and they appeared in the museum. In the year 2004, the museum was honored the title Exemplary, which is confirmed every 5 years. In 2014, the new exhibition devoted to the heroes of Zaporizhia land appeared in the museum. It appeared in the connection with the beginning of Russian aggression against Ukraine. It is dedicated to the struggle of Zaporizhia citizens in order to preserve the territorial integrity and unity of Ukraine. In the year 2021, the concept of museum changed. Now it is a live museum. It gives opportunity for visitors to tour history through interactive activities, holding things in their hands, trying on protective armor, count on old abacus. With the beginning of the full-scale aggression of Russia on February 2024 in the year 2022, the topics of the excursions changed. The parallel is drawn between the German aggression of 1941-1945 and the Russian one since 2014. So in the year 2023, the museum has nearly 2,000 exhibits. Some of them are in the excursion, 506 items. The rest are in full storage, and the number of them is 1,450. The exhibition Life of Ukrainians in the 1930s-1950s of the 20th century introduces museum's visitors to personal belongings and household items. For example, the exhibits include cast iron, gas lamp, wooden abacus, and much more. A wooden abacus was used instead of the usual calculator. Every family in Ukraine had books. They used to read Kobzarь, the most favorite book of Ukrainians. By the way, the exposition also includes example of communist propaganda, a collection of speeches by Soviet leader Stalin. Some families kept these books to show their loyalty to the regime of the tyrant, as Ukrainian families suffered from the totalitarian dictatorship. The unique exhibit is the wedding dress. It was handmade one. It was made by a bride. The bride herself sewed such a dress by herself. Then it was decorated with embroidery. Each region of Ukraine had its own patterns. The table and the bed were decorated with napkins, which almost every woman knew how to make. A sewing machine and a record player are a sign of family wealth. They began to appear in every family only in the end of the 1950s and 60s of the 20th century. Our museum has got exposition devoted to the beginning of the Second World War. On August 23, 1939, Hitler's Germany and Stalin's Soviet Union signed the secret Molotov-Ribbentrop Agreement or Pact, which provided the division of Europe between two tyrants. Violating international agreements, both aggressors started World War II on September 1, 1939. Germany attacked Poland, and on September 17, under the pretext of protecting the Ukrainian population from the fascists' threat, the USSR started occupation of western Ukraine. As a result, the western part of Ukraine was occupied and annexed by Soviet Union. Elections to the People's Assembly of Western Ukraine was held in the occupied lands under the control of Red Army. In February 2014, Putin's Russia started a war against Ukraine. It annexed the Crimea and created republics under its control in Donetsk and Lugansk regions. On February 24, 2022, the full-scale invasion of the Russian army into Ukraine began. As in the 20th century, since the beginning of the aggression against Russia, since 2014, Russia has violated over 400 international treaties, where Ukraine is a party, including the Bucharest Memorandum, the Charter of the United Nations, a number of United Nations conventions, and the Helsinki Agreements. Stalin's rhetoric about protection of the Russian-speaking population, fighting against Nazism, and Ukrainian threat to Russia became the slogans of Putin's Russia. The methods of spreading Russian peace haven't changed. As in the years of the World War II, there are murders and tortures of civilians and prisoners, conducting illegal referendums in the occupied territories, including Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, and Lugansk regions. And they became the parts of Russian Federation. Robbery of the population, removal of industrial equipment and training, compulsory passporting of the population, abduction of Ukrainian children, creation of filtration camps for Ukrainians, destruction of Ukrainian culture and education. On June 22nd, the Nazi Germany attacked its ally, the USSR. At 4 o'clock in the morning, German troops crossed the Soviet border. Aviation began to bomb the cities. The German-Soviet war began. During the fighting for Ukraine, the German Blitzkrieg plan failed. Kiev defended itself for 72 days, Odessa for 73, Sevastopol for 250. The Russian Blitzkrieg in the 21st century also failed. The heroism of the Ukrainian defenders made it possible to hold out and resist the occupiers at the Donetsk airport for 242 days in the years 2014-2015, Mariupol for 86 days. The battles for Bakhmut lasted 1 year, 3 months, and 26 days in the year 2022-2023. The battle for Avdiivka began in February 2022, and it is currently continuing. On August 18, 1941, the fascists captured the outskirts of Zaporizhia and the island of Khortyts. Soviet powers decided to destroy the Dnipro gas dam. The first detonation was carried out by Soviet troops on August 18, 1941, during the retreat. The Soviet authorities hid the scale of tragedy in Zaporizhia for a long time, accusing the Germans of undermining it. A hole of 175 meters long and 21 meters high appeared in the dam, through which an almost 6-meter wave crashed down, causing the destruction of houses in the coastal zone. Residents of low-lying areas of the city suffered the most from the sudden flood. The explosion led to the destruction of machinery room and the detonation of the power supply, as a result of which the activity of Zaporizhia industrial enterprises was paralyzed. Casualties among Red Army soldiers and civilians are often estimated at number from 20,000 to 120,000. The losses of German army are not known. During the German occupation, the dam was rebuilt, but in the year 1943, during the retreat from Zaporizhia, it was blown down again, already by German troops. On October the 4th, the Germans broke into the burning Zaporizhia. A total of 44,000 civilians and prisoners of war died in Zaporizhia. 58,000 people were deported to Germany. On June the 6th, 2023, Russia committed one of the largest environmental and humanitarian crimes in the recent history by blowing up the dam of Kakhovka hydroelectric plant. The reasons for another terrorist attack is the inability of Russian army to stop the offensive of the armed forces of Ukraine in Kherson region. The humanitarian consequences are manifested in the lack of centralized power supply and drainage in many settlements of Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia and Kherson regions. Approximately 880,000 people were without the access to centralized water supply, which posed a direct threat to their lives and health. There were immense economic consequences in the largest industrial centers of Ukraine, like Zaporizhia, Kryvyi Rih. As a result of the explosion of the dam, a humanitarian disaster occurred. Houses were flooded, pets, people died. A lot of people lost their property and crops from the fields and gardens. The environmental consequences are not known yet. The ecological disaster is a tragedy of a global scale. The zone of influence of this tragedy covers at least 5,000 square kilometers that were flooded or drained. The offensive of the German Army Group North on Leningrad began on the 10th July 1941. The Soviet troops retreated, and on September 8, 1941, Leningrad was surrounded by the Germans. Hunger was the largest problem for the population of Leningrad. All routes to the city were blocked, which made it impossible to deliver products. The population of Leningrads were left alone with their misery. The norms of bread were reduced 5 times in Leningrad. More than 2 million civilians lived in Leningrad at that time during the blockade. The food supplies were limited. At the beginning of the German-Soviet War, the Soviet government did not make any sufficient food reserves and did not evacuate the majority of Leningrad's population. The norm of giving bread to the residents of the Leningrad was sharply reduced. Workers who received 800 grams began to be given only 250. Civilians who received 600 grams each had their ration reduced to 125 grams. The same amount of bread began to be given to children who previously received 400 grams of bread. The bread in Leningrad was baked with the special ingredients. Only 75 of these ingredients were eatable. The defense of Mariupol began after the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine and lasted from February 24th to May 20th, 2022. It took 86 days, 82 of which were in complete surrounding. From the first days of invasion, the occupiers destroyed the city's life. All the city buses prepared for evacuation of the population were burned down. Many civilians were surrounded, unable to get out of the city. At the beginning of March 2022, the shelling of the city by the Russian invaders continued. There was no electricity, no water, heating, communication and food in the city. About 80% of the city's housing stock was destroyed. People were dying of hunger in the city surrounded by Russian invaders. All attempts to organize a humanitarian operation to save the city residents were blocked by the Russian side. According to Zara Maximova, who lived in Mariupol, food was cooked on bonfires. To survive, we cooked balanda. It consisted of a handful of cereal, sometimes rice, or pasta, 3 potatoes, canned vegetables. All of these were our food. We salted it and poured with oil. Children licked the plates after eating. There were rumors that pigeons were already being caught and eaten in nearby cellars. Water was worth the weight in gold. It was exchanged, mined and saved. Several times men risking their lives went to the city park where the spring was. Sometimes they melted the snow. According to the data, on March 21st, more than 100,000 civilians remained in the city. On March 15th, it was confirmed that about 1,800 civilians died in Mariupol during the blockade of the city by the Russian occupiers. As of May 2022, more than 20,000 civilians of the city were killed due to Russian aggression. From September 1941 to October 1943, a strict German occupation regime was established on the territory of Ukraine and in Zaporizhia region. Today we have got memorials devoted to the victims of the German regime on the territory of Ukraine in Zaporizhia. Arrests, mass shootings, as well as killing of civilians created the new phenomenon, Holocaust, that was carried out in a form of genocide, physical extermination based on national identity of the Jewish population. Concentration camps were created. Since the beginning of the full-scale Russian invasion, 80% of the Zaporizhia region has been under occupation. As in the years of Second World War, racism seeks the complete destruction of the Ukrainian state and our nation. After the start of full-scale invasion of Russia, in 2022, the city of Zaporizhia was subjected to artillery fire and air raids that were carried out by the Russian occupiers. According to the data of National Police of Ukraine, from February 24, 2022 to February 24, 2023, more than 400 rockets were sent to Zaporizhia. As a result, there is death of 344 people, including 21 children. 939 people were injured. 63 of them are children. The enemy terrorized the civilian population, destroys the civil infrastructure of our cities, destroys houses, schools, hospitals. In the occupied territories of Ukraine, Ukrainian books are destroyed. Filtration camps are set out for Ukrainian citizens. This is the violation of all international norms, and Putin regime organizes so-called referendums on the inclusion of Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Donetsk regions into the Russian Federation. Mass graves of Ukrainian citizens tortured and killed by the Russians were founded in the liberated Ukrainian territories, in Kiev, Kherson, Kharkiv regions. Thousands of Ukrainian defenders are in Russian captivity and suffer from inhuman treatment and tortures. In the 21st century, Putin's Russian peace is copying the methods of the new order of Nazi Germany, trying to destroy democratic ideas and European values. In the 1930s of the 20th century, aviation in the USSR was inferior in development to Germany. Most engineers were repressed, shot or thrown into concentration camps. 80% of Soviet aircraft was destroyed by the German air forces in the first days of the Soviet-German War. Therefore, the war for the sky was fought mostly on American planes. Bell P-39 Air Cobra, the American fighter of the Second World War period, which was distinguished by an unusual design for its time. The engine was located behind the cockpit and was connected to the propeller by a long shaft. Half of the all-produced aircrafts, more than 4,500 units, were delivered to the USSR. Under so-called Lend-Lease, the aid provided by the USA to the Soviet Union. The most productive ace flew on the R-39, such as Alexander Pokryshkin, Grigory Richalov, Ivan Kozheduk. Ivan Kozheduk was a three-time hero of the Soviet Union. He is a famous hero and ace. By the end of the war, Kozheduk flew 330 flights, shot down 64 enemy planes in 120 air battles. On February 24, 2022, the Russian invasion of Ukraine began as a part of the escalation of the already existing war between the two countries. During the offensive on the capital of Ukraine, Kyiv, which began on the first day of the invasion, videos began to be widely distributed on social networks. The pilot of the MiG-29 aircraft, nicknamed the Ghost of Kyiv by the Ukrainians, won 6 fights in the skies of Kyiv during the first 30 hours of invasion. The losses of the Russian forces in less than 2 days of the aggression were 10 planes shot down. 6 of them belonged to the fighter pilot, who was known as Kyiv Ghost among the people. On March 7, 2022, the Ghost of Kyiv shot down an enemy caliber cruise missile near Obukhov. On April 29, 2022, the British publication The Times published an article in which it called the Ukrainian pilot Stefan Parabalk a ghost of Kyiv. During the first day of the war, he managed to destroy 6 enemy aircraft, Su-27, MiG-29, 2 Su-35 and 2 Su-25. On April 30, 2022, the Air Forces Command of the Armed Forces of Ukraine announced that the Ghost of Kyiv is a collective image of the pilots of the 40th Tactical Aviation Brigade of the Air Forces, who protected the skies of the capital. The museum exhibits weapons from the World War II. The exhibits were collected by the students of the school during research and search expeditions in Zaporizhia region. Since 2014, the museum's exposition has been supplemented with the samples of weapons by the armed forces of Ukraine to repel Russian aggression. In the museum, you can see also the remains of Russian rockets, which they used to shell the cities of Zaporizhia, Orihik, Gurevskoye, and Kyiv. There are also trophy exhibits. Russian aggression against Ukraine, the volunteer movement intensified. During the years 2014-2021, the museum established mutual relations with volunteer organizations of Zaporozhye, Солдатский привал и Парасолька. These organizations helped to organize meetings with students and volunteers. From the first days of the full-scale invasion of Russia, a decision was made to transfer part of the exhibits to our defenders. Helmets, body armor, and underwear were sent from the museum's funds to the front line through volunteers. For the needs of defenders, metal flasks from the time of Second World War, sapper showers were given. They gave us back their own flags, which represented their brigades. An important component of the museum activities in 2022-2023 was the involvement of all interested parties in collecting aid for our defenders, wounded, displaced from the occupied territories. And we create here the camouflage nets, the kikimora, and we make motanka dolls, the special Ukrainian traditional toys which can protect our soldiers as talismans. Today, our museum is not only about things and exhibits. First of all, it is about people. Here we have the true stories of our ancestors, as well as modern heroes. Their life paths, all of this is preserved. The school museum, the deed must live, there is a memorial of school teachers. They are relatives of our school children, who joined the heavenly army of defenders of Ukraine. They are Maxim Spiretsky, Mikhailo Tsonba, Yuri. There is a tradition in our museum to end the excursion with a silent eternal memory.